Tell me the craziest thing someone said when you came out as trans or LGBT. I'll go first. My pastor growing up, my childhood pastor, from age birth through 16, he was like a grandfather to me. He told me that my transition was a demonic possession in that Liam had possessed my birth name because she was weaker. He had overpowered her, and that he would always pray for her redemption.
What's up, y'all? My name's Leticia, and you're listening to Confessions from the Closet, a podcast all about vulnerability and overcoming. It's time we get ourselves unstuck from these boxes and these closets that we've allowed ourselves to be trapped in. We're so much bigger than these boxes we've been in. It's time we go deep, y'all. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another week of Confessions from the Closet. I'm really excited about this week's episode. I have someone who somehow found me on TikTok, which seems to be the app these days, and asked how to be on the podcast, which is really exciting for me. It makes my life easier, makes my job easier because, as I say every week, I really want to share y'all's stories because each one is so unique and so different and so special. And so this week I have my new friend Liam on. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about himself for a second. Hey, Liam.
Hi, I'm Liam. I found it actually through Jana Trans Mama because she shared that she was on the podcast, and I was like, "Yeah, how can I get on this podcast?" So I guess just comment on the video, and that's how you do it. So
simple.
Yeah, super excited. Yeah, right. TikTok is the place to be. I've only been on it for less than a year. I'm still learning the ropes. So
you have quite a following, though.
Yeah. I don't know how. I had that one really big, totally unexpectedly. I woke up in the morning to a bajillion notifications. I was like, what? I just edited that while I was, my spouse was taking a nap and I was bored. Let me throw something together while I'm sitting here by myself,
Right.
Then I put my phone away, didn't open TikTok till the next day, So it's been cool. So my name is Liam. I'm 27. I've been transitioning. I'm transgender, female to male. I've been transitioning for 5 years now. I came out in 2016. I was in my senior year of college at the time. And I grew up very religious, so it took me certainly a very long time to kind of come to terms with everything. I knew probably as early as age 5 that something was different about me, but I didn't have the terminology or the language to be I'm a boy. It was just I don't feel like I'm supposed to be a girl, but I didn't I couldn't even really formulate words with how I felt. I just knew that I felt uncomfortable for my entire life. And anyone who knew me through childhood and teenage years will look back and will tell you yeah, you were a miserable person. You were just kind of there. My grandmother says, she's like, you weren't really living. Yeah, I grew up living with my grandparents in the same house, and she's like, yeah, we lived together, but I didn't really know you. You were just kind of there.
Yeah.
You were just a shell. There was nothing about you. You just went and hid out in your room, and that was it. So, and that was just how I felt for my whole childhood. I just felt like something was different, but I didn't know that other people felt that way. I didn't know what it meant, and and there's so many things I can look back on now where I'm like, yep, that was gender dysphoria. I always wore a backwards hat like this, so I didn't have to see my hair. I wore my hair in a little bun on the back of my head, so. I look in the mirror, I didn't have hair, little tiny things like that where I was just always self-correcting and making myself feel better. If we played house, I was always the dad, the brother, the dog. If someone was calling me a male name, it just made me feel better. And it was, obviously all kids kind of bend gender when they're playing, but it was every time we played, I was always the male role. I didn't want to be the mother role or, so it was more consistent than just kids trade roles,
Right.
That's something my mom tried to argue, I was the dad when I played kids. I'm like, yeah, but for you, that was just being a kid. For me, it was more than that. But
yeah,
we'll get into my parents later. But just little moments like that all throughout my life. Definitely the peak of it was middle school. Middle school sucks for just about everybody. It's a hard time.
Yeah.
Cis, straight, gay, trans, whatever. It's just crappy. But when your body's changing in the opposite way that feels like it should, then it's even worse. All my friends were excited about getting their period and getting bras and wearing makeup, and I was like, what? Why would I want to do that? I really truly, I think at that time thought I was just a boy like all my other little boyfriends, growing up. But then as we got older, it was like we couldn't have sleepovers anymore. And it was like, but why not? We have up until like, age 10. Why can't we have sleepovers anymore? I always just felt like I was the same as them. And eventually my parents kind of pushed me into fulfilling the, more feminine roles. And in high school, I just kind of was like, whatever, I'll just go with it. I don't have the energy to fight back on, they were trying to tell me how to dress and, I need to grow out of my tomboy phase and all that. And it was just, I was depressed and unhappy, and it was just easier to kind of go with it than to try and fight back on it. And then it was at the end of high school that I came out as a lesbian, because I thought, oh, in order to like women, you have to feel like a boy. That's how I kind of rationalized that feeling I had forever, was like, I feel like a boy because I'm attracted to women. That's just how I understood it at the time. And so I thought that was the answer. I was like, I figured it all out. I figured out why I felt so off. I am gay. I had to come out as gay. And so I entered college, trying to figure that out, but something was still missing. It's like, I had all these friends. I was having a good time. I was playing rugby. I had a girlfriend. I seemingly had everything going for me, but I still felt empty at the end of the day. And it was just I couldn't see a future as a woman. The more I thought about it, it was just blank. It was I couldn't see a wife, kids, a job, family, anything. It was just nothing. I didn't want to be a woman anymore. And it was there was no way forward as a woman for me. And so I studied abroad in 2015. And it was me and 2 guys and 2 girls from my college. I didn't really know any of them. We all kind of just had class together, but we were overseas together. Yeah. And the whole time I felt more like one of the guys. Same as when I was a little kid. I was I feel like I should be in this group. Whenever we split off for, whatever, for gendered things, I feel like I should be going with them. And that feeling was coming back really strongly. And so they don't give you a lot of homework when you're studying abroad, because they want you to explore, So I had a lot of nights where I was just watching videos on YouTube, how do you know you're transgender? How do you know you're transgender? Everything I could possibly consume. And even so, I was still not 100% convinced. It was that's a cool thing that people can do, but that's not something that I don't think I can ever do, because my car is talking to me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, I didn't even know I had OnStar. Apparently I do. Anyway, because of how my family was very religious, I was there's no way I could ever transition. That would blow up everybody's worlds. And at the time I was I can't do that. That's too risky. Everybody's my friends, whatever, okay with me being gay, but trans is a whole different level. You just never know what people think. It's a little more accepted to be, in a same-sex relationship. That's more mainstream, I guess, than being trans. This was 5 years ago. So it's becoming even more talked about now, but still back then it was still not as much seen or talked about. So I kind of put it on hold and just came back and forgot about it. But the feelings didn't go away, and eventually I shaved my head, and I looked in the mirror and I went, holy crap, this is what it is. There's no hiding from it anymore. I wish I could describe the moment in words better, but it's I finally saw myself looking back. All these years I've been seeing this reflection that didn't really feel like I was looking at myself. And then as soon as I shaved my head and looked in the mirror, I was oh, there you are.
Yeah.
And so at that point I was okay, I have to do this no matter the cost, both emotionally, financially, whatever. So thankfully, I had a lot of really great support from friends and most of my extended family, but my parents have been completely against it. They're very conservative religiously, so I was raised Evangelical Christian. So, I don't know if you know Square Church. Yeah, that's what they're part of now. And so, for example, my childhood pastor, who I knew from, I don't know, birth, maybe 2 or 3. I don't know when he came to our church, but all the way up through when we left that church, probably 15 or 16, he was the pastor of the church. He was a third grandfather to me. I saw him more often than I saw a set of my own grandparents.
Yeah. Because
they lived far in. So we had a really close relationship. He told me that my transition was a demonic possession. In that Liam had overpowered the weaker female version of me, and that she was too weak to resist, and so Liam had taken over, and that he would always pray for her redemption. And I was I don't even know where to try and meet you in the middle. like, most people, like, my parents aren't that crazy, but that's the person who was leading the church that my parents went to for 20 years,
Yeah.
They also thought Obama was a Muslim coming to ruin America. So, like,
Oh,
he's way
extreme.
far down over here where it's like, I can't even figure out how to talk to you anymore. But,
Yeah.
um,
I have someone
like,
else who was told the same thing. Their child's like 14 and just
oh
came
my
out trans,
goodness.
and the pastor or family member said the same thing, like possessed by demons. And like,
Oh my
what?
gosh. That's
Just
just
hurts.
like next level, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I made a TikTok about it recently. So that's I was like, tell me the craziest thing someone
Yeah.
said to you when you came
Oh,
out.
I saw
That
that.
is mine. But it's like, what? I just,
Mm-hmm.
like, I can't even rationalize it. Because I was like trying for a while, like, I cut off all these people who weren't accepting, but then it was like, okay, I don't want to, like, regret not at least trying to repair some of these relationships, so I was going to
Yeah.
try and meet him in the middle, but then he said that. This was all over email. Like, I'm not even touching that. I'm going
Yeah.
to let that one fall by the wayside, because there's no in the middle for that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor. So, I mean, every other Sunday he was like the assistant pastor. So every other week he was the one preaching. We were always involved in church. It was,
Mm-hmm.
I remember being like 5 or 6, and they were always talking to you about, like, oh, you have to, like, accept Jesus into your life. And I was always like, I don't really understand, like, what that means. But when you're little, you're just like, okay, yeah. So I remember one night being like, I think I'm ready to do it. And my family was like so excited that I was like, I'm ready to accept Jesus. It's like, I'm just doing it because I knew that it made them happy.
That was the step.
I don't, right. My faith as a kid, I don't really think was my own. It was just like mirroring my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the older I got, the more I started to be like, I don't really like this. Like, I don't really vibe with it. And when I
Mm-hmm.
came out as a lesbian, well, I was actually outed. So I was like semi dating this girl who my sister knew from being in dance school, and her family was Catholic. And they found a letter that I'd written to her, like a
Oh.
love letter.
Mm-hmm.
They gave it to my parents. And then my parents come to me and they're like, so you like girls? And I was like, no. And then they pull out my love letter to this girl. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
what? So I didn't, because my plan was like, okay, I'm just never going to tell them. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to figure out my life. They're just never going to know.
Mm-hmm.
That was my plan. And it got blown up completely because they're like, oh, here's this love letter you wrote. And weirdly enough, like, my mom hung on to that letter for a long time. I found it in one of her dresser drawers like 2 years ago. Like, why are you still keeping this love letter I wrote to someone else? It was bizarre. So I took it back. But
Yeah.
you don't need to keep that. It's really weird.
Yeah.
I don't even talk to this girl anymore. So. But that, I mean, my family's always been like very much like not confrontational. So it's always
Mm-hmm.
like they started writing me these letters. I'm literally living in their house. I'm like 17. They're like writing me these letters about how I'm going to go to hell if I keep doing this. Like, they wrote a letter to like a bunch of people in our family being like, help us. We need warfare prayer going on to like save her soul. And it was like, and again, it was like my mom had gotten this like a vision that like a demon was in our house, like trying to take down my mom through me, by me being gay, was going to like destroy my mom, which makes a lot of sense now thinking about how she's acted over the years. But so that was how they reacted when I came out as just gay. And it was easy enough for us to kind of like ignore each other. Like, we just didn't talk about who I was dating. That was it. We just kept on. I stopped really going to church at that point. I went off to college, and when I was home for the summers, they're like, if you want to live here, you have to go to church. But most of the time I would, like, oversleep my alarm because I'm like, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to a church full of think the same way. Like, I literally feel disgusting having to set foot in there because I know that all of them know, because my parents have been asking everybody to pray for me.
Wow.
So it just felt so uncomfortable. And I can remember a sermon. I don't remember what year it was. I think I might have still been in high school, but they were talking about like why marriage, like the sanctity of marriage is at risk. And one of the 3 reasons that the pastor gave was gay marriage, because I think it had just gotten legalized.
Yeah, I remember that.
There was another point where they were praying about the governor to make the right choice about voting on whether or not gay marriage should be allowed in New Hampshire. And they were praying for him to vote no. And so I'm sitting there like, this is, and everyone's like, amen, amen, you know, like going crazy. And I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. And like, that was my only experience of church, was like people with this mindset. So I'm like,
Yeah.
either I have to, you know, be religious, or I have to be queer. Like, I can't be both. And like throughout the years, it was like part of me always wanted to come back to it. I had like a secret like playlist of like worship music that I'd listen to when I was like sad, you know, like, but I didn't want anyone to know that I was like still listening to music and thinking about church and stuff, because I had been like, so like, fuck church and fuck Jesus. You know, I was like so against it, because I was so hurt by everything that my parents were saying to me, that it was like, you know, how can I ever go back? This is how church people think. You know, I can never go back. They're telling me I have to, like, you know, renounce who I am. And the same thing when I came out as trans, my family, I knew my parents were going to take it badly. I saved them till the very end, because I was like, they're not going to like this at all. Like, they already are so not into me dating women. And that's easy enough to ignore. But if I'm changing my whole appearance, you know, my friends are like, well, won't they like it now because you're straight? It's like, no, I don't think it works that way. Unfortunately. Yeah, that would be way too simple.
Yeah.
But in a typical fashion, they had about the same reaction I did when I came out as lesbian. They were like, first thing my mom said, this was over video call, she's like, but you'll never be a real man. Which is just like dagger right to the heart, you know. And I can see her facial expression. She's got like confused wrinkle, and she's just like, that's the first thing she says. It's really bizarre, because they're so like focused on like the sexual aspect of it in a weird way. Like we don't care if you like love women, but like the sex is bad. The sex part is immoral.
Yeah. Why is that such a big deal?
So you're okay with me like being in a relationship with this person, but not like, so it's so weird. And then they're like, this is always going to be a dirty secret in your closet. And I'm like, why are you so fixated on that?
Yeah.
Please stop. You're my parents. But that's, you know, that was their viewpoint of like, this stuff is, the Bible says this stuff is bad, you know. So yeah, and I spent a lot of time just I didn't go to church for probably 3 or 4 years. I think only on like Christmas when I came home.
This is like before you transition, after transition?
Well, like half before, half after. Like there's a period like the few years before I transitioned and the few years after, I was just like, nothing to do with church. It was too painful, you know, it was too painful. I was like, I really want to go back, but I didn't know how to find a safe space, you know, and nobody puts it right on their website like, we hate gays, you know. It's so hard to find it. Especially with like the Foursquare churches, they're like so hip and cool, you like don't know that they're like so terrible until you're like religious, in it, you know. And it was like, right. And it was like, if I'm going to go back to church, I want to be able to be authentic and be honest, because I have a lot of church trauma and I want to work through it and get back to a better place in my faith. But like, I feel like I either have to lie about who I am, you know, just go into a church now and say, I'm just a cisgender guy, you know, like, but it's like, that's not honest. And that would feel like always like inauthentic. And I was like, I want to repair my relationship, but I don't know how to do it without, you know, risking being hurt again. And that the risk was too high at the time.
It's scary.
Right. In 2018, my grandfather was dying, and he was not afraid to die at all. He was, you know, he died about a week after Easter that year, but on Easter we had this little at-home service, and we're going around and we're all crying, and he's like, I know you guys are all really sad, but like, I'm ready to die. I'm going to be with Jesus. I am not afraid at all. You know, he's like, just let me go. Like, I want to go. I'm ready to go and be with Jesus. And I was like, wow, I want to be that sure about something. Like, it makes me emotional to remember that moment. 'Cause it's like, that was what the switch flipped for me, was like, okay, I want to find a place where I can be active in my faith again, because I want to be that sure about it again, you know, like just seeing how comfortable and not afraid he was, like, of death. So, him and my grandmother have been going to the same church for like 35 years, a Lutheran church, which is where I go now. And that year, actually, they were doing, what's the name of the book? Transforming by Austin Hartkey. It's about what the Bible says about transgender people. And they have been doing that in their like adult kind of book study thing that they did. And for the last meeting, summer, the pastor was like, hey, will you come and just share your story with the group? And I was like, sure, I can do that. And I did that. And it was as simple as at the end, this one guy came up to me and he's like, I hope that you come back.
Mm.
And it was just it was like mind blowing because it was like, wait, you want me to come back just like this, as I am? No need to be like, oh, I'm not trans or I'm not gay. It was like that one part of me was so small. He's like, I want you to come back. I was still afraid because I was like, okay, these like 10 people that I just talked to were so nice, but like, what about everybody else? So I went back and forth about it for so long over that whole summer. Like, do I want to go? Should I go? I really wanted to, but then I would get so afraid. I'm like,
yeah.
But what if all the what ifs would start running through my head? And eventually I just started going back again. And I feel like so at home there. It's like that community that I always missed having, as a kid. And yeah, it's been so healing over the years now. It's been like 3 years now that I've started going back, almost exactly, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, and now they're like officially became an open and affirming church. So in the Lutheran church, it's called RIC, so Reconciling in Christ. They have a big old rainbow flag out front of the church. And
That's awesome.
last year, my spouse and I, we had a little mini COVID wedding. So it was just us and our pastor and our families outside the church in front of the gay flag.
That's
got
hilarious.
married. So
love it.
I mean, if you had told me that 3 years ago that like I'm going to get married outside of the church, and I would have been like, no, like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I know that like through all the moments, like God has been there, like gently pulling the string. Every time I thought about like completely turning away, it was like one little thing would turn me back, and I always had my little worship playlist to fall back on. And it's funny because like I grew up in the non-traditional service, but I always thought that like the traditional like liturgy and all the was so boring, but now I love it. And I don't know if it's just because I think being in a church like my parents' church would be so way too triggering. Even if it was an accepting church that was more modern, like even just like modern worship music now is like, okay, this brings me back to moments where I'm like felt so uncomfortable. So I think it's partially that like it's just completely different from that. And also it's my own thing. Like now it's my choice to go. It's like my own people, my own safe space versus before it was like you have to come with us and be in this environment. So
and change.
And I think it's so powerful to me, because also like we're singing hymns that have been sung for like hundreds of years, and I think that is so cool too. I'm like, wow, people have been singing these same songs since like the 1600s, some of them, like that feels so powerful to me rather than a song that somebody wrote last week. Not that that's not all beautiful and powerful, but for me it's like, wow, the history behind it is really powerful to me too.
Well, and that they were willing to change and be accepting. And they have a way longer history than, some of the churches that are so hip right now.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the Lutheran church wasn't always accepting, but they've done the work to come around and to really try and understand. And, now we just started an LGBT committee at our church. Right now it's me and my spouse and like a couple of high school kids, but they don't really do that much. So I'm like, I think it's just you and I and pastor that are going to be doing the work here. It's going to be a long-term ride, but we wanted it to be like a place where people who are queer that come into the church like automatically can make some other queer connections and also be able to do some like educational stuff for our congregation. So when we voted to become officially open and affirming, it was like a unanimous. It was 100 to 0, like everybody voted yes. Most people that were hesitant about it at first were like, but we're already very accepting. Why do we have to do this? And it was like, well, this way people can see that we're accepting from the outside. We're able to say like, hey, this is a safe space, rather than people having to risk it and come in and see. So
that's important.
And a lot of people just don't know stuff. So we did last June, we've been doing all virtual church with COVID, but we did a virtual coffee hour where my spouse and I just talked about pronouns and just other various topics, and people just had so many questions. So it's like, okay, we're hoping to plan on some more events now that we're going to be able to start going back in person, just educational things for people to be like, how to be good allies. Like, what can you do to support the community and in coming back to church, because it has been a very hurtful space for so many people.
So long.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I love that they're so proactive. Y'all are so proactive there in making change and making it more widely known that it is a safe place. Because it's true. Like, I remember when we went to our church, like, we were terrified, and I had all the what ifs. What if they know? What if they try to pray away the gay? What if, because everywhere we went, that's what we felt. We'd feel people sitting behind us. I'm like, they're literally, I know they're trying to pray it away. Like, I could feel their prayers, and I was like, this is gross. Like, stop praying for me. I'm fine. Pray for me to be happy, you know?
Right.
And then we walk into this church, and my nephew is getting dedicated, and my mom sat on the third row. So I was like, okay, let's just be right up front. And we knew that was home. That was safe. And we were like the first, openly married with a kid family there. There was another gay couple, but we were terrified. I was very terrified because we had been trying for so long to find a place. And I don't think people understand how scary it is. They're like, oh, just go find another church. Like, you don't get it. Once you find
keep
one,
opening yourself up over and over too.
For more trauma.
How many times can I open myself up to get the same thing thrown at me?
Yeah. It's so crazy. And I was longing for the same thing. Like, I was like, I have to be surrounded by people who have faith because that's all I know. But I want them to like me for who I am, not for who they want me to be. So I love that y'all are so proactive at your church, and they're so open to like hearing your story and your spouse's story. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we're actually, so there's like a ceremony. My pastor actually sent me the link to it. He's amazing. Like, he is one of the best queer allies. Like, he's an ally for every marginalized group out there. Like, he is an amazing guy. And even his oldest child has come out as, I think, non-binary. So he's so supportive. He's so great. But he sent me this link. This is before COVID. We were going to do it this year. But it's called like a renaming ceremony. So it's kind of like a baptism, but it's like for trans people that you kind of like let go of your old name and like take on your new name, like in this little ceremony. So we're planning on doing that eventually. I think that'll be a really special way to like have the congregation involved and like see like, this is how we can support queer people. We can do ceremonies like this, not just a baby dedication, but like accepting your new name and, you know, saying goodbye to the old name. So, and that was his idea. Like, I had never heard of that before. And I tried to Google it, but there's really not a lot of videos of it. Cause I was like, I want to know what that looks like. But so certainly we'll be documenting that whenever I get to do it. Cause it's really a special moment, especially in feeling, you know, to have that place in a church environment where I've, you know, had so much hurt from church to have. It's little by little, all these positive moments are kind of chipping away at all the pain.
Yeah, because there's still scars. I mean, even when you heal, there's still there.
No, I think, and with my parents, I mean, we didn't talk for a long time. I'm kind of on speaking terms, mostly because my grandmother lives with them. So in order to see her, I have to kind of deal with them, and not talking to them like really wasn't working for me because it was painful. And so we kind of just have this surface level relationship, but every once in a while I like think back on like what they said in the past and all these things. And it's like, you know, it can be hard to move forward. You know, my mom and I had a conversation recently where she's like, what did I do that with? I'm like, do you not remember? Like these letters? I still have all of these like 12 letters in a drawer in my desk drawer. Like, I can't get rid of them for some reason. They're still there. Yeah. Just holding on to them. Like, do you not remember all these things that you said and did to me? Like, it's like, it was just part of their, you know, that was their experience of my transition as well. I try and be gracious and know that they totally blindsided, but, you know, like at this point, like, how do you not remember what you were saying and doing to me? It's very painful. I don't know that I'll ever have a deep connection with them or the people in my life that were from my childhood church. Like, it's like everyone in my life has been great. And then all these people I knew from that church are the ones that are like, no, you're a woman. God made you a woman. Yeah. Like you're saying God made a mistake. I was like, I have never said that. I never once said that. I don't believe he made any mistakes. I believe this was his plan. Like, I've never once said God made a mistake. You're the one who's saying that. You know, like, I fully believe that he was like, this is the plan for you. Like, I want you to, pave the way for other people. Because for so long, I literally thought I have to choose between the two. You can't be both queer and Christian at the same time. Like, those two things don't go together, but they so often do. And it's just so not talked about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a little bit younger than me, but we didn't have anyone to look up to that was like, you can be both.
Right.
All I knew was you couldn't.
Right.
I felt the same way. You
Exactly.
can't. You can either have God or you can have love. And you're going to lose a lot of people.
You can't have both.
That's why I think it's so important. Just
you certainly won't have God's love anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I heard. And so I love that. I mean, this like the heart behind the podcast is like, yes, you absolutely can have both. And
I think
obviously it's easier for the other generations right now already. And so many people paved the way before us. Did you have anyone, I mean, internet was like a thing, but not really social media. Did you have like any trans people who you looked up to?
Definitely. There was a couple I followed on YouTube as a kid, but like none of them were religious. It was just, they were just a good example of being trans. I can't honestly think of anyone that I follow or now even that, is a religious queer person. I feel like so many people are like, get hurt and they turn their backs completely, which is a completely valid route to go as well. Obviously everyone has a different experience, but yeah, I mean, I definitely was following queer people, but nobody that was having this similar experience to me. So that I almost felt like I couldn't talk about it, or I would be like invalidating myself in some way of like, so that's why I always had my little secret faith playlist that I listened to, like that I told no one about. I was like, I don't want anyone to know, because then they're going to be like, oh, but you can't do that,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like rejecting my queerness either, I was like, how do I balance it?
Yeah, because that's what I say sometimes. I feel like I'm too gay for the Christians and too Christian for the gays. Like, and it's just such a weird new road that hasn't been talked about enough.
Right.
And owning both is also a journey for me. Like, okay, how do you find this new road that hasn't really been talked about?
Right. We have to pave the road.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. So you said your spouse grew up Catholic?
Yes, Catholic and kind of the same evangelical. So we realized actually that we went to the same like Foursquare evangelical church during high school. We just never met each other, but they can remember seeing my family because we were all redheads. And they're like, I remember your family. You sat up to the left in the front. And I was like, yep. Wow. So it's funny. We've like it's crazy. Our paths have like almost intersected at so many different points in our life. But we didn't meet until 2 years ago. We met on Twitter.
That's crazy. And live in the same
They
town.
DM'd me, and the rest is history. So
that's fun.
Honestly, thanks to my parents, because I had put a whole series of like angry tweets being annoyed about Easter, and they had been misgendering me all day. And I was like, I'm so sick of my parents doing this. It's been like 3 years. Like, what? I got a full beard. You're still calling me she all of Easter. And so I went on this rant, and they had messaged me. My spouse was like, hey, like, just wanted to say, hope today's better. Holidays can be hard for us queer folk. And then we started talking from there, and here we are. So,
that's awesome.
Like, shout out to my parents, because I wouldn't have made that tweet if they weren't sucking. So
right. So, because you just started talking about it, your spouse is non-binary, and something we talked about last week was just trying to understand that more for listeners who don't know. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll do my best to. So I'm definitely going to send you a link. My spouse and I made a video on my YouTube talking about when they came out. They just came out this year, recently, about 2 months ago. But they've been thinking about it for a very long time. And so basically they just feel like they've always called it kind of like woman adjacent. Like, they were assigned female at birth and they've had all these womanhood experiences, but it doesn't feel like them. And neither does male. They kind of feel like more like they're just kind of a spiritual being, just like in a human body. So they're more, they just connect more with the they them pronoun. And I mean, there's no one way to be non-binary. If you look at all the famous non-binary people that have come out recently, you got Sam Smith, you got Demi Lovato. Jeez, Demi Lovato. I'm saying Demi Lovato. I'm like, that's not right. And like Jonathan Van Ness, I mean, some people, Jonathan Van Ness, for example, he uses all pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
He, she, or they, and Sam Smith is they, them. Demi Lovato just said, hey, I want to be using they, them. So like, it's different for every person the same way that every queer experience is different. I think a lot of times people try and box it into like this third gender expectation, but it's about not having gender at all.
Yeah.
You're just existing, and you're able to be and express however you want that feels most authentic. Like, they still present very femme. So people often will misgender as she. So they have these giant earrings that say they, them.
Really?
They've been wearing, like, they're like this big.
That's awesome.
But and all the time they're always like, femmes can be them. It just goes to show, like, you really don't know what someone's pronouns are unless you ask them.
You don't, yeah.
Because that's, it's just internally how you feel. And like, I truly am still learning from them. Like, I don't understand it very well either, because I went from one binary to the other. I always knew I was a male on the inside, and I knew that female was not right. So in the same way that I always knew that, they've always felt that they didn't really fit into either box. They always kind of felt that way. But they're twins, so for a long time they're like, I don't want to mess up my twin relationship with my sister. There was a whole lot of different factors that kind of held them back. And then finally I was like, like, you gotta let yourself free. It's gonna feel so much better. And so finally they came out this year, and I can see a change already where they just feel like better and more confident, even just in switching the pronouns.
Yeah.
So it's I'm still learning a lot as well. So definitely I would say watch the video we made, because we went through and answered, and you can listen to them answer better than I can probably sum up how they feel. But I'm still learning as well. I mean, I didn't really know any non-binary people personally until they came out to me. So it's just always been a thing where I'm like, well, I don't really get that, but like, there's no motivation for me to figure it out. Like, I was just like,
yeah.
So I'm still learning. So just, even if you're in the queer community, it doesn't mean you're an expert on every part.
Yeah, there's so much.
So, everybody's always learning, and it is, every experience is different. Your story is different than your wife's story. Like, everybody has a different experience of what it is. Just like, every trans story is different. I mean, we all have commonalities, of course, but everybody's experience is different. Everybody's desires of their transition is different. Not everybody wants hormones and surgeries. Some people go all the way. Some people don't do anything at all. I mean, it's all personal, and nobody's more or less anything based on what they choose to do. You're the only one who knows who you are. So at the end of the day,
I love that. Do they? So you mentioned they have a twin sister. So does it bother them to be called sisters still?
No, I mean, we haven't really. It's funny because my sister was like, what should I call them now? Like, my brother's spouse or sibling-in-law? And I was like, we haven't thought about that yet. So we're still thinking about like the terms that you normally use. But I think sibling, I mean, that's what my sister and I say to each other, because honestly, for so long, this is like the only way I still misgender myself, is when I meet somebody who's my sister's friend, I say, hi, I'm Lauren's sister. And then I'm like, I mean, she's my sister, like I bungle it all up.
Yeah.
Because for 22 years, I was her sister. So like, that in my brain, I have never been able to correct. It feels weird to say brother. So like sibling. Yeah. I like to say sibling.
Yeah.
I think the more we can kind of like neutralize it for everybody, the easier it is going forward.
Yeah.
We've been trying to figure out a more neutral way to say aunt, because we have a 5-year-old nephew who just says auntie. But they're like, I'm not like loving that, but also I don't really know what else to choose.
Yeah. That's
uncle. There's no in the middle, So like with mom or dad, you can just say
different things. Yeah. You make up an
it's
my son calls us our son, he heard my wife call me honey, like whenever they were in the shower and I was supposed to go get him, she'd be like, honey. So he started calling me honey. And one day I was like on the phone and I was like, hey, darling. And he started calling her darling. So we're honey and darling. That's so cute. Now. And
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
It's adorable. And then our daughter
made a video about that on TikTok, and everyone's like, just let him pick. I'm like, he's going to call her like rock,
Yeah. Honey and darling. I call that. Our daughter couldn't say my name when she was 2. So she calls me Lisa. And when she finally started calling me mom, I was like, no, I like Lisa. Now everyone calls me Lisa. I'm like, I guess that's my other name. Even people from church, when they hear it, call me Lisa. So like, yeah, just make up a
Like,
name.
just like
It
get my
works.
name changed.
Yeah, you just make
Right.
up a name. It's
Right.
fun too,
Love
especially
that.
when kids do it because it's special.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I would.
So,
Yeah, let him. It'll be funny. Be honey or
yeah. Let
darling.
them.
Who knows?
Right. Something like that. I like that.
Thank you for explaining that, though. I really.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I keep trying to tell my daughter. I'm like, I think that they don't identify as super male or super female. There's just this in between. And I saw a video yesterday on TikTok that was called the Two Spirit thing, and it was from like indigenous tribes, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that I was like, that makes sense because a man could go and hunt, but he could also like to sew. It was just not these gender roles. It was like you do what you're
Right.
good
Exactly.
at and what you like, and that was a thing that they just tried to shut down.
Oh,
And
white people came along and were like, "Rah,
no, that's not
binaries."
acceptable. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think thankfully we're in a generation where we're trying to break those norms and,
Right.
women can do anything. Like I remodeled a kitchen. I've never done that, but why not?
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to, I mean, my dad's a carpenter, so that helps, but women
Right.
can do whatever they want and men
Right.
can do whatever they want, or they can do whatever they want, whatever it is. Like
Right.
do what you love, I think.
Right.
And be who you want to be. So
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
yeah, I
Break
like
out
that.
of these gender roles that have been set upon us for too long that just hold people
Yeah.
back.
Well, it's
You
like
know?
boys used to wear dresses and pink, and then that
Right.
changed
And
one
everyone
day.
gets right now.
And now
Men in
pink's a
dresses
girl
is
color. Yeah. I'm
right.
like,
So,
no, it's not. Pink's not a girl color. My
I'm
nephew
super
loves
excited.
pink.
There you go. Yeah, my nephew, he loves Elsa. He loves like everything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
his father's like, no, we're like, he's literally 5. Like,
It doesn't.
just let him be a kid.
change.
He's
Yeah.
looking up to the hero of the movie, like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we have a bunch of our daughter's old toys that were like, why would we buy more? And they're pink. And my son doesn't care. But then other boys will come and they're like, that's a girl toy. I'm like, no, that's a free toy. We paid for it. It's still around. He doesn't care. It rolls.
That's just a toy.
Yeah, it's just a toy. It just happens to be pink. It was his sister's. It's a hand-me-down.
Right.
We're about that life. I don't want to buy another toy.
I saw this video once that was like, they had babies, boy babies and girl babies, like playing with toys, and they switched their outfits so the person watching them didn't know that they were actually the opposite gender, and they were trying to encourage them to play with those toys, and it just proved like the kid's gonna play with whatever toy you give to it.
Yeah.
Like, he's not gonna be like, oh, I'm a boy, I'm gonna play with the trucks, or I'm a girl, I'm gonna play with this. It was like they still chose whatever toy that they were just given, so it's like we're putting that onto them.
Yeah.
When we should just give them toys and let them play, let them explore,
Yeah. Well, it's like my son wants to vacuum and wash dishes because that's what he sees us do. And I'm like, it takes forever to let him do it. But I want him to grow up and do chores. Just like my daughter, she takes out the trash. I'm like, she's able to walk across the street, take out the trash. It's not a boy or girl thing. It's that you live in this house and you're responsible.
Let's break down that toxic masculinity.
Anyway, I mean, it's either going to be her or me or my wife. It's going to be a girl, regardless who takes out the trash. So, we're all about trying to let them explore whatever it is that they love, and it's a new thing, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, do y'all want to have kids? Excited. Is that a weird question?
No, we just really like being the fun uncle and aunt. We got a dog, we got 3 cats. That's pretty good. We're like, okay. I don't really want to parent. I used to think I did, but then, when I met my spouse, their nephew was 3.5 at that time, and I was like, oh, I can have like a meaningful relationship with a child, but not have to be the parent. Which is like what I was seeking. I was like, I think that would be cool. I hadn't been around kids since I was myself a kid. So then I was like, wow, this is fun, but also I like to be like, okay, I'm going home.
I gotta go. Yeah.
So I like to be I want to be a good role model. I want to be, involved in people's lives in that way. But I'm like, I don't want to fuck up anybody. I have way too much childhood issues. We both feel like, okay, I don't think we're cut out for it. We'll take care of your kids sometime, but for us, fur babies only.
There you go.
So,
there's a lot of people who don't want to.
It would be so complicated for us, even if we wanted to have children. So it's like, I think if I was like cisgender and we were together, it'd be like, oh, if we accidentally got pregnant, then yeah, maybe we would. But it's like there's no accidentally, so there's no intentional. Don't like intentionally want to. If something was to like ever happen to her or their sister, then yeah, we would like take him in. Something like that. That would never happen, like obviously. But intentionally wanting to become parents, no.
No. Well, that's good. Yeah. You gotta know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We can't accidentally get pregnant either, so.
It's like, one time we were at the doctor, my spouse was at the hospital, and the guy was like, any chance that you're pregnant? And they're like, no. And he's like, how do you know? And we were just both like, it's not biologically possible. And he was just like, and he's like, I don't have time to get into that. And he just went on to his next question. But we were like, what do we say in that situation?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot. Like when I go to the doctor, and I'm like, thankfully my gynecologist knows because she helped us get pregnant. But other places are like, are you sure? I'm like, 100%
I'm
sure.
Pretty sure.
I'm definitely not. Unless the Holy Spirit came down and impregnated me like Mary. I'm not pregnant. Yeah. Definitely not. So it's a weird question. I'm like, no, I'm not.
No. Like if I say no, then why do you have to pester? Like,
I know. No. It's so weird. Yeah, things that people don't think about. Well, I mean, is there anything else? I love you're following on TikTok. I love what you share. I think it's awesome because you're really educating people and you're very open, and I like that.
That's my goal. Is like, I want to just be able to like. I think about like what I would have benefited from seeing when I was like 14. That's who I try and be like. That's why I'm like, I gotta get into TikTok. That's where the youth are. Like, I have this whole YouTube channel, but like, no one's really on YouTube anymore. I still share things. It's kind of like a video. It was started out as like just a video diary for me to like track my transition, and then I started getting some followers and people commenting and stuff like that. I think I have like 1,000 followers there, which is a lot for
good.
Like YouTube. Like TikTok, that's like nothing. TikTok's weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, my spouse is like, you need to make a TikTok. You need to make a TikTok. And I like resisted for so long. And finally I got on TikTok. So I really like it. It's been super fun to connect to people. And I just try and be authentic. This is my experience. I'm not trying to bash people. Like whenever I make a post about my parents or like just maybe one about my childhood friend, like I'm not trying to be mean to them. I'm just trying to connect to other people that have had the same experience. So they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person whose best friend totally ditched them. I'm just trying to show people like you're not the only one in that experience. Because when I was a kid, I thought I was the only one who felt the way I felt. So I try and be real about what's happening in my life. Like that's important to me, to be super authentic online. Because most people aren't. It's hard. And most people, for the views, the likes, and it's hard. Just comparing yourself to others. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be real. This is me being real as I can be.
You do a great job at it. I feel the same way. I've had letters and I've had things, and people have, like the people who were friends with me and knew that I was talking bad about a friend on Instagram were like, who are you talking about? And I told them, and they got all mad. They're like, you can't be hurtful. I'm like, this is my story. Like, this is what happened. I'm not being hurtful. I'm sharing. This is the trauma I went through. I still love them. We don't talk. But it happened because it's happening to other people. And I want them to know, like, you're not alone.
Yeah, I made a TikTok on Mother's Day about how Mother's Day is hard for me. And my mom saw it. She's not on TikTok, but somebody who knows her saw it and showed it to her. And she was really upset about it. And I was like, I'm not making that to be mean to you. Like, I am, because that is my experience. And I'm trying to connect to somebody else who's having the same experience. Like, if I knew you were going to watch that, I probably wouldn't have posted it because I'm not that mean. But I knew that you weren't on TikTok. So, like, I didn't know your friend was going to see it. So, but again, it's like, it's part of my story. I'm not just going to pretend like it didn't happen. Like, those are all things that impact me to this day. I'm just being authentic. Like, somebody else out there doesn't like Mother's Day either, and it's going to connect to that story. So, I totally feel it's like, I'm not, it's, you're just sharing because you want to connect to somebody else in the same position, not that you want to be mean to the person that you're talking about.
I think it's important. There's so much trauma that even straight people or anybody can carry, but we're so surface level as a world. I think that it's important to dig deeper and be like, look, I have the same problem, and that's how we heal.
Right. Exactly.
As being just open and real and raw, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so hard to be vulnerable
There's
for some people.
Yeah. There's a million videos on my YouTube of me crying. I mean, I show it all. Like, if I'm going to document it, I'm going to document like the ups and the downs. I felt like everyone I was watching was always posting the highlight reel of like hormones, hormone update, top surgery, and not like any of the hard stuff. And I'm like, the hard stuff's going to happen too. I don't want people to go into it thinking it's all going to be sunshine. You know, it's not all sunshine.
Yeah.
But the sunshine is bigger than the sad most of the time, you know, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important to show all sides of it, you know, not just the happy part, you know.
Yeah, that's good. It's important. Because, people, I mean, with coming out, you know, most likely, especially if you're in a Christian or religious environment growing up, you know it's going to be hard. Like, you expect it.
Right.
But then all the other stuff that comes with it, you're not really as prepared for.
Right.
And I'm sure with transitioning and all that, I know it comes with more. And it's not my story. That's why I share yours. So I could try to explain it, but I do know, and I have empathy that I know it's not an easy road.
You do risk it all. I mean, so many, especially older generation trans people, like my grandfather was really into like researching stuff when I came out because he wanted to like understand better. And he found this story, I think it was a blog of this doctor who literally gave up everything, like owned her own practice, gave it all up because she didn't have support. She like had to completely start from scratch, started working for somebody else, moved to a completely different state, like transitioned completely, lost her whole family. Like that is the level that some people have to go to be able to be authentic, you know, like you have to risk it all. But it's like, do I live a miserable life but have all these things, you know, like what do you keep giving up, your happiness or stuff like that? So and even when people who come out as gay, I mean, some people have to give up everything depending on your family and where you're at, you know. It can be hard that's what held me back for so long, was like, do I want to risk everything that I have in my life? You know. And eventually it was like, I'm going to die if I don't do something. That was the point of that. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you found your joy and you were brave enough to risk it all. And I love that you and your spouse have found a place that y'all are able to have faith and be safe, and now even get to help other people doing that. I think that's amazing.
Every once in a while, we're both like, wow, I can't believe like go to a church. It's like, we're in church.
It's crazy.
We're church people again. It's weird, you know?
It's amazing. And I hope it becomes more of a just normal thing across the country and the world. I know it's still illegal in so many places, but thank you so much.
I think
for
that
being
this movie, the 1946 movie, is going to be big.
Yeah, did you see that? I interviewed her, Rocky.
Yes, I'm so excited for that to come out.
I'm really excited.
It's going to change things for me, I hope.
And they're interviewing both sides, like for and against, and I think that's important.
That's awesome. Yeah,
to show both.
I know. I was like, don't want it to be too biased, or everybody will just write it off. You know.
Yeah,
so that's good.
I mean, when I came out, I read
for that.
Both sides. I was reading against and for, and then came to my decision. Because I didn't want it to be just like what made me happy. I wanted to like really think about it and pray about it. But.
Also, definitely highly recommend the documentary "Changing the Game." Just came out on Hulu.
Okay.
It's about trans in sports, but there's one part where the transgender guy, his grandma talks about how she's like, I'm a devout Baptist and I read through my whole Bible and there is nothing in here that says that it's wrong. Like she's like, I wanted to know the way because, you know, her faith was important to her. So she speaks to that a little bit in that documentary. It's a really awesome documentary too, talking about.
Do you have any books that you'd recommend?
Oh boy, I got a bunch. Let's see, what's a good one? Love Lives Here by Amanda Jete Knox. Both her child and her spouse transitioned like a year or so apart of each other.
Oh, wow.
I read that book literally in like 5 hours, cover to cover. It was so good. She's an amazing writer, and her story is really, really powerful. Once a Girl, Always a Boy is another book. Who's it by? Joe Ivester. It's another like mother's perspective, and also kind of it goes back and forth between the mother's perspective and the son's perspective. He transitions. That one was really good. Yeah, certainly there's plenty others. I could send you a list if you want to put them in like show notes or something.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at what all the authors are.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And then the
whole
first
collection.
one you recommended in the beginning that your church was reading. What was that one?
Transforming by
I think
Austin
I've
Hartke.
seen. I think I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because he speaks
that's
a lot
a
of
really
places,
good one.
doesn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. That's a good one for people that want to get into more of the biblical perspective on things too.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well,
So.
I really appreciate your time, and I'm thankful that we got to chat.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. That really helped me because I'm always looking for new stories. So anyone listening, if you feel like you have a story that you want to share and that you've been through trauma and you just like to share, reach out to me because I'm all about finding new stories to share. Thank you so much for being on. I'll be sure to like add your TikTok handle for everyone to follow.
Awesome.
You on TikTok because you share a lot of great information. And everyone listening, please subscribe, like all the things. And as always, have a great one. Until next time.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to my mom's podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and give this video a big thumbs up. Also, thanks for your comments and your feedback. Hey guys, thanks. Hey guys, thanks for listening to my podcast. Oh gosh.